And the model then required, so it did become complicated, which is why I make this comment about it being bureaucratic, is the social worker would write a plan. The domiciliary care agency would then go in to visit the same person whose plan had been written and have a conversation with the older person about, if this is the plan, how might we together ensure that plan is delivered? That was kind of phase 2. And then phase 3 was the providers then signed off their plan, sent it back to finance in the local authority, who then ratified a sum of money that would be paid for the set of outcomes that had been agreed in the plan. And so you couldn't go get. So it was quite long-winded, quite a few people involved in the stage, but it did have a very strong focus on the outcome. I calculated that it was probably, to the providers, costing them about £2 an hour to manage their part of the contract. So, which is, as I indicated earlier, that's right at the high end of what a process might look like. I did suggest to Wiltshire that they could cut some of those processes out, and they could trust the provider to agree with the older person what was going to happen, and then have a financial ratification of that process, rather than the kind of steps, the additional steps in the way. So in ambition, I think it was good. And in the early days, actually, it did deliver really impressive outcomes. So in the early days, for example, they were getting 2/3 of people were getting 6 to 8 weeks of care, and then it was being stopped by the providers. They delivered the care, they re-abled people, they got people back on their feet. Now that performance actually has slipped over time, so that's interesting in itself. And it's interesting because it's not a strongly therapy-led service, which the evidence suggests those services should be more therapeutically led. As I indicated, there is the evidence of actually the PETAL service, wasn't it? It was called at Somerset Care, the dementia care service. Again, very interestingly, Chris and I have been talking about it, no one commissioned that service. The provider, in their wisdom, decided, actually, I've got a number of patients with dementia, I want to ensure they get a better service, I want to have a set of staff who are better trained to help those people, and the provider off their own back agreed to pay a slightly higher rate of pay, so kind of career progression for those care workers. The measurable outcome for that group is they're being supported to stay at home and not going into the community, not going into residential care, a different kind of outcome than maybe the wider population. So that's the kind of model that's kind of rather dominated a lot of the kind of other English models. Windsor and Maidenhead, Hertfordshire have also adopted similar approaches. I have to say, one of the things that and I identified this earlier, that really seriously challenged the model was that Wiltshire brought in, pretty well with one exception, new providers into the market to deliver the model for them. So they focused very strongly on those providers who they thought were up for delivering a new model. That created absolute chaos in the market. The providers who were in the county who did not win the contracts were very, what's the polite word, fed up, and were very resented this whole process going on. Their willingness to work with the local authority beyond that was pretty low. Who can blame them? And many of them survived because there was a strong enough private market and they focused on their private customers. And actually now, if the local authority wants them to step in because there's a capacity challenge, which there are, as you can imagine, in a rural county, particularly in the south of Wiltshire, they charge the local authority the earth and back, in order to, if they're that desperate for a service, you'll have to pay for it. So actually it kind of didn't not everything in the system worked to the benefit of the customers in Wiltshire. So now none of that has ever made me change my mind that it wasn't the right idea. I think what I've always said to Wiltshire, I say this to them when we have these discussions, is it's in the inception, but maybe there could have been some further thought. But again, when local authorities are trying to do new things, the spectre of audit and other regulators and others looking at them tends to make people be a little bit risk averse in their practice, and maybe that's where some of the bureaucracy crept in.